Hello, my name is Christopher Koetzle and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Towns of the State of New York, also known as NIAT. And I want to take a few minutes to talk to you about something important to our state, our towns. As we've turned the page on 2024, we are kicking off a new year and a new state budget and legislative cycle in Albany. Here at the Association of Towns, we're also kicking off a new era. I was recently appointed the new executive director this past year, and I'm humbled, but also excited about our future together. This will be my first full year as the leader of this great organization, and I intend to make this our most impactful year yet. Later today, Governor Hochul will deliver her annual State of the State message, which lays out her priority issues for 2025. These broader strokes will be filled in later this month when she presents her 2025-2026 state budget. So in preparation for that, I'm kicking off a new tradition here at NIAT by delivering my own 2025 State of the Towns address in advance of the governor's speech. The goal is to make our agenda and our policy positions clear to the media and policymakers, and of course, to make sure our members know that we will not hesitate to pursue their interests here in Albany, no matter what the challenges. Thanks to the hard work and dedication of our members, our residents, and our employees, the state of our towns is strong. We have faced headwinds and together we have overcome them. That said, 2025 is setting up to present even more significant challenges than in many years past. COVID-era funds, which helped to stabilize the state and some local budgets, have dried up. This will be the first year since COVID that New York will likely get less from the federal government than what we pay in. The New York State Department of Budget is predicting a $1 billion budget gap this year, which is projected to grow to more than $7 billion by 2028. Those projections assume that federal aid will remain more or less stable. The problem is, it is not necessarily the direction that Washington is going to go. We know, for example, that in 2022-2023, the federal government covered 99% of costs for New York's essential health plan. We also know that while localities and the state pay the overwhelming share of our education costs, the federal government does chip in with 4%. What would be the impact if a new Congress and administration in Washington eliminated the Department of Education, as has been said publicly, and/or reduced Medicaid payments to New York? It could easily make a difficult budget year for state and local governments even more challenging. As a former town supervisor, I know to stretch a dollar and how far a dollar needs to go. I know our members know how to find efficiencies better than anyone else. However, I also know how important it is to have partners in the state government. Many of our organization's top priorities for 2025 will not cost the state money. They simply require the will to act. Although our towns have many needs, I just want to focus on our top priorities for purposes of this address. They include defending and promoting home rule, workforce development needs facing our towns, equitable challenges to the tax cap formula, and tax reform, and continued support for highway, transportation, and infrastructure projects. Our number one issue, the very basis of NIAT's existence, is the protection of municipal home rule. Every issue we consider is run through the prism of home rule because it is the backbone of our local governments and fundamental to community development and self-governance. Beyond our primary objective, NIAT and its members are very focused on workforce development. Towns have very limited budgets and benefit expenses continue to grow. As a result, it's become very challenging for us to attract good candidates for the jobs that make the towns work. Our first suggestion is a simple one. Raise the salary cap for retired employees from the current $35,000 to $50,000 a year. This has not changed since 2020 and therefore has not kept up with the increase in inflation. This would allow towns much greater flexibility to hire well-qualified retired folks for jobs that badly need to be filled. Second, We asked the governor and the legislature to reform the state civil service law to allow provisional employees to automatically become permanent after 9 months on the job if no exam is available, and declaring that New York State licensed professionals are not classified as competitive. This simple streamlining of the law would create a much more equitable system for our members. The next two proactive ideas do come with some fiscal impact to the state, but they are a long-term investment in building better communities and promoting public safety. Towns in New York need ready access to employees with commercial driver's licenses. Our towns depend on these folks to clear dangerous snow-ridden roads, pick up yard waste, and perform hundreds of other tasks that residents count on each and every day. Unfortunately, there is a statewide shortage of folks with CDL qualifications. One main reason is that obtaining a CDL costs $7,000 and takes 10 weeks of training to complete. We want to work with the governor and the legislature to remove this barrier by creating state funding programs to reimburse CDL costs for people who choose to work for state and local government. This is an important investment, not a call for senseless spending, and it's something that would benefit each and every government entity in the state. Another workforce development challenge for towns has been the reduced benefits available to our employees through Tier 6 retirement system. We applaud Governor Hochul and legislative leaders for including important reforms in the 2024-2025 budget. These are a strong signal and a step in the right direction. As we move into 2025-2026 budget year, we urge all state leaders to continue that momentum and make additional benefit changes to Tier 6. Next up is an issue very important to all of us: property taxes. Despite the good intentions of New York State's property tax cap, inequities remain on the books that hurt our members and damage our ability to get consistent, predictable revenue for local budgets. In this session, we urge the governor and the legislature to do two very important things. Number one, reform the pilot process to ensure that towns have a strong voice in any tax arrangement made by industrial development agencies. And number two, revise the tax cap formula to exempt costs for infrastructure, healthcare, workforce development, and special improvement district costs. County IDAs comprise 62% of all IDA projects in 2022. While they are an important development tool, towns simply must have a seat at the table to advocate for fairness and to uphold the principles of home rule that I mentioned earlier. The tax cap, which was made permanent without proper reform in 2019, simply must be revisited. At a time when we need to invest in replacing aging infrastructure and our members are struggling to fill open positions, towns need more room to operate under that cap. These reforms are vitally important to our members, and we will push hard for them to be addressed this session. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the very basis of our organization is the defense of home rule. And nowhere is that concept at greater risk than in our energy sector. Our members appreciate and understand the need to reduce harmful emissions. After all, many of the negative impacts of such emissions on the environment and public health directly impact the 9.1 million constituents that we represent in our towns. The problem is that in their rush to build new power sources, state officials have attempted to set aside home rule. The Office of Renewable Energy Siting, or ORS, has taken away the authority for our members to apply local planning and zoning standards to renewable energy projects of 20 megawatts and over. Worse, legislation is being considered in Albany which may well be part of a budget negotiation, which would allow a state appeal process for projects that are smaller, perhaps as little as 2 or 3 megawatts in size. NIOT will fight these changes and anything similar because our members have spoken loud and clear. Any policy which reduces home rule authority is a non-starter. We will call on the governor and the legislature to engage local government on these issues, and let's find a way to meet the state's objectives while protecting and preserving each local government's interest. If we work together on this, we can address this important issue. Another area where we can all agree is in need for more investment is our state's infrastructure. Every dollar invested in local roads, bridges, and municipal infrastructure, such as water and sewer systems, is another dollar that is invested in the state of New York. So we are calling on the state to increase funding for roads and bridges in the next budget and to create a dedicated infrastructure fund modeled on CHIPS and AIM. We call it SWAP. Studies continue to show a shortfall of billions of dollars when it comes to the infrastructure, and we need to continue to act to ensure that our residents can travel safely. As such, I call on the governor and the legislature to continue to increase funding to all programs associated with the maintenance of our roads and bridges in the next budget. This vital infrastructure truly benefits every person and business, and we have an obligation to make sure that adequate funding is a top priority. NIAT is here to be a partner with our state government in order to build a bigger and brighter future for our members, our state, and most importantly, the citizens of the great state of New York. The funding we are asking for is not simply a cost. It is instead a much-needed investment in our future, in our children's future. Our goal must be bigger than any one speech or any one budget. It must be the revitalization of New York State itself. In order to achieve that goal, we must work together to reverse the population decline and the brain drain that has been taking place over the last 2 decades. And we need to find ways to make New York more affordable and more attractive, not only to our young people, but to those across the country and around the world. As Emma Lazarus famously said in closing of her poem dedicated to the Statue of Liberty, "Lift my lamp beside the golden door." Let's make that our goal for 2025, renewing the promise of our state through the investment in our towns and their people. For the only path to a better, brighter, and stronger New York is by strengthening, lifting, and supporting our great towns throughout the state. To the great elected officials and the employees of these local governments, thank you for your hard work. You deliver critical frontline services with fewer and fewer resources each year. Your work is known and it is appreciated, and NIAT continues to stand with you. Thank you all. Happy New Year, and may God continue to bless the great state of New York.